And dear friends, those who are listening carefully, really fortunate and very lucky. It is really the blessing of Lord, grace of God. Today we are listening origin of Hinduism. Origin of Hinduism is in Brahmanism or Vedism as promoted by Aryans who came to India from the Caucasus region of Central Asia about 5,000 years ago, settled on the banks of river Gangas in North India and started a thinking process which later came to be known as Brahmanism or Vedism and now generally termed Hinduism. First, some thoughts on Brahmanism. In this religion, major god was Indra, whom these people believed to be their war god capable of destroying enemies with his thunderbolt called Vajra. Several legends were woven around this god. Later, other gods were in the form of storm and thunder, sun, fire, etc., giving rise to primitive speculations, including the concept of cosmic order, which got associated with another god, Varun, as its creator. It was considered as the ultimate truth, and it was felt that man must live in line with this order. Anyone going against it by way of committing sin or being untruthful would earn wrath of the Creator and other gods. To appease these gods, ritual sacrifices developed as an accepted practice to ensure success in growth of crops, cattle, breeding, etc. Related elements of awe and wonder were taken care of by priests who developed expertise related to these rituals and called themselves Brahmans. In the process of sociological categorization and later developed a whole gamut of associated activities termed Brahmanism, guided by scriptures called Vedas, hence also termed Vedism. These priests developed several related concepts, more importantly that of life after death, that those who live lives of sacrifices and charity pass to heavens after death, while the unrighteous are incarnated in lower life forms such as worms and insects. This in turn gave rise to the concept of karam, the sum total of good and bad deeds or conduct, The concept of transmigration of soul gained acceptance and became a fundamental truth in Brahmanism as it could satisfactorily explain suffering, wish and wish prosperity of different individuals. It may be worth mentioning that this philosophy may also have been propounded in justifying the social inequalities prevailing in those times. Next came the concept of supreme soul, means Paramatma, and deliverance means moksha from the vicious cycle of birth and death, rebirth, as the very thought of repeated deaths must not have been a pleasing one. The doctrine of Karam was extrapolated to impress upon people that if they did good deeds, termination of this vicious cycle of birth, death, rebirth was possible, as a cleansed soul would merge with the Supreme Soul God. While the Brahmins performing ritual sacrifices aimed at purifying individual souls, remained the sole link between God and man. Another set of people developed in the form of ascetics who were unorthodox, practicing silence, penance, and questioning Vedas, the original Brahmanic sacred scriptures. They were, however, persuaded to come to the orthodox fold, but all this gave rise to incorporating new philosophies in the form of Upanishads. Another set of religious scriptures, however, soon yet another class of ascetics or hermits also developed, which claimed to possess supernatural or magical powers of the type with which they could burn an enemy with a sheer glance or fly to heaven, etc. Hinduism Hinduism is more a culture in the name of Sanatana Dharam, means everlasting faith or righteousness forever. The faith of Hindu, it was termed Hinduism by people from other lands because they could not understand the term Sanatan Dharam and as such started calling it Hindu faith or Hinduism. The religion followed by people living beyond river Sindhu or Indus. In the Indus, gigantic plains, the word Sindhu distorted to Hindu. Basic features of the faith are the concept of karam, means deeds, according to which as you sow, so shall you reap. A concept which, apart from coaxing people to do good deeds, also gave rise to the belief about rebirth, by which way one is accountable to one's deeds and is accordingly rewarded or punished in the next life. Next, number 2 is joint family system, where seniority, means by age or relationship, is given precedence, and next is caste system, a sociological phenomenon where people are divided into four groups on basis of division of labor in society, namely the priestly class Brahman, fighter class Kshatriya, business class Vaishya, and service class Shudra. In due course of time, a fifth class was also evolved, that of untouchable, means achut, a phenomenon since discouraged by the state. Hinduism is in way an extension of Brahmanism or Vedism that has been described earlier and is a blend of knowledge and culture of Aryans who settled in northern parts of India and the Dravidians, the dark colored people of the southern part of India, characters of God Vishnu among the Aryans and that of Shiv among the Dravidians, as well as several other gods, were further developed and merged with mythological tales woven around them. These tales came up in the form of scriptures called Puranas as books of sacred laws. The two great epics named Ramayana means Ram, where Ram is the hero, and Mahabharata, Gita included, means where Krishna is the hero, being considered an encyclopedia of early Hinduism. One interesting aspect of Hinduism is its being a personal religion with a flexibility whereby it upgrades itself with modern thoughts. In Hinduism, one is free to even argue about existence of God and his incarnation. There are no precepts like thou shalt not. Strictly speaking, in Hinduism, there is no religious hierarchy. However, one ancient Hindu saint named Adi Shankar did not set up four monasteries during early 19th century AD, each headed by a head priest called Shankaracharya, who were together considered as protectors and promoters of Hinduism. It must be mentioned here that the succession of those priests have no statutory powers to rule the people who follow Hinduism. Nobody can be excommunicated or persecuted in Hinduism. Revolutionaries like Buddha and Adi Shankar were both taken seriously and honored, although Buddha was not for the Hindu scriptures, means Vedas, and Adi Shankar was proactively in favor of the same scriptures. Hinduism has thus remained always open to criticism from anyone without really affecting its following. Also ingrained in Hinduism is the concept of tolerance and universal acceptance, wherein all religions are respected and can find refuge in its fold whenever things get hostile for those faiths in their own lands. Israelites were received among Hindus when they fell on bad times under Roman oppressions, while on one hand Judaism failed to accommodate Christianity, means to the extent of crucifixion of Jesus. On the other hand, founders of Zoroastrianism were accommodated in the Hindu land. Even internally, Buddha, who rose against some of the significant fundamentals of Brahmanism, was also only accepted but even defined as an incarnation of the supreme Hindu god Vishnu. Founders. There are no specific founders of Hinduism, that is, no prophets or messiahs or any related hierarchy. As a result, persons following Hinduism are usually not susceptible to rhetorics of rebel arousing clergy and do not make much of a religious mob. Political movements in the garb of religiosity excluded. Hindus may respect or revere holy personalities but do not regard them as ultimate authorities. Later, this philosophy gave rise to evolution of two different philosophies, namely Dvait means dualism and Advait means monoism. Philosophy of Dvait, advocated by philosopher Ramanus, 11th century AD, and later by Madhav, 13th century AD, is about two realities, one dependent and the other independent. While God is independent, all matter and souls are dependent on God. God is significant from salvation point of view. Advait philosophy, advocated by philosopher Adi Shankara, 788 to 820 AD, is about only one reality, is God, means Brahm, and all the rest in the universe being illusionary, what is commonly termed as materialistic. Human soul, means Atma, is only a part of God or Brahma. However, some scholars talk of a middle philosophy, propounding that there is a personal God who deserves devotion, and that this one God who is the supreme soul, means Paramatma, in whom souls of all living beings, means Atma, must merge to attain salvation. Like in binary system, 1 and 0 can work out all phenomena. We can treat 1 as God and 0 as void. Considered as reality in the Dvait philosophy and an illusion in the Advait philosophy. Hinduism, instead of being founded, more or less evolved as a culture arising from Brahmanism, which itself originated from Vedic scripture, which are claimed to have been revealed by God to ancient seers and later compiled by Aryans sometime 4000 to 1000 BC. Concept of God or creation. In Hinduism, it is believed that existence of universe is a matter of perpetual cyclic process overseen by one supreme power which is omnipresent, omniscient and omnipotent, visualized as the absolute reality called Brahm or Paramatma, and everything else in the world considered an illusion. This absolute reality or supreme power takes several manifestations, each being responsible for one or another function to control the happenings in the universe. Although monotheism is the basic philosophy in Hinduism, this supreme power is worshipped as gods or goddesses in several manifestations. In line with this concept of manifestation and followed by a process of henotheism, whereby hierarchy of God rearranged. God was realized as Trinity, comprising the creator Brahma, preserver Vishnu, and destroyer Shiv, as major gods in the cyclic process of creation, destruction, and recreation of the universe. Additionally, the concept of incarnation of some gods or goddesses, as well as that of several demigods, also took shape. It must be mentioned that the whole concept of multiplicity of gods must have been a matter of convenience, because ordinary followers could only grasp God in human forms with specific attributes, and therefore they resorted to the ideas of different deities, even though it remained clearly understood that there is only one supreme power of the Brahm. Major Hindu gods and goddesses are Vishnu, supreme god who protects his consort; Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and Vishnu's 9 incarnations, which include of the epic Ramayana, Krishna of the epic Mahabharata, and orator of Gita, and Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. Brahma, the creator of the universe, and his consort Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Om. Om or Aum is the mystic and holy word understood to sum up all truth in the universe, representing the formless supreme power God. Om is pronounced at the beginning and or end of Hindu rituals or prayers, and this pronouncing is understood to create vibrations which link up with God. Swastik. Swastik meaning it is all well, is an auspicious sign for Hindus. It also signifies the constant movement of life, hence of Sanatana Dharam, as harbinger of good luck. It is also understood to be a graphic symbolization of Hindu god Ganesh, the god of auspicious beginnings. Shiv, the destroyer of evil, and his consort Parvati, the goddess of fertility, means, and her several manifestations, more importantly that of Durga, and their 2 sons Ganesh as the god who helps remove obstacles, and Kartikeya, the god of war. In addition to these major gods, there are several other gods claimed to be 330 million in total. More people among them being the fire god Agni, river goddess Ganga, the monkey god Hanuman, means who assisted god Ram during his conquest of Lanka, the rain god Indra, the sun god Surya, etc. It may be in the fitness of things to add here that much of the concept of such a variety of god or goddesses came about as targets for appeasement with the ulterior motive of material or spiritual benefits in specific domains. For instance, goddess Lakshmi is worshipped for financial gains, and the god Ganesh for removal of obstacles. According to Hindu mythology, universe exists under a certain rhythm and is created destroyed and recreated in a perpetual cycle process, each cycle covering a time span of a couple of thousand million years. Afterlife in Hinduism, the belief is that while the body dies, the soul never dies, which moves on to a higher or lower echelon of living world as reward or punishment for deeds done in life. This can also be understood with an example that when a new life is born in a poor family or with some disease at the time of birth, it is attributed to bad deeds in the past life. Thus, according to the Hindu belief, after death, every soul carries a heavy load of karmas and is granted a befitting body. This goes on until all the karmas attached to the soul are exhausted through one's journey in various lives, undergoing suffering and or pleasure sensations until realization of the Almighty, whereby the soul, that is Jivatma, merges with the Almighty Paramatma, loses its identity and thus achieves salvation from the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, etc. Sansar. For the righteous, salvation may be achieved in one life, and for the unrighteous, many lives or many lives may have to be lived to achieve the noble end of termination of the sanskaric cycle for oneself. It must be admitted here that this is one of the easiest ways the Hindu ancient schemes must have found to explain all types of inequalities in society. Honestly speaking, there is no corroborative scientific evidence to prove as true such a theory called reincarnation. Scriptures. In Hinduism, there is no one particular book like the Bible for Christians or the Quran in Islam, but there is a very large number of scriptures which were produced primarily around 2500 BC onwards, that is some 4500 years from now, when the Aryans arrived in India. Some of the major scriptures are the follows: Vedas, 2500 BC onwards, books of knowledge, 4 in numbers, titled Rigved, Yajurved, Samved, and Atharvaved, understood to have been God's revelation to seers. These were documented by scholars whose identity is not clear, but it is safely presumed that they must have been Aryans, means magical incantations for use during sacrificial ceremonies to propitiate gods, a practice of early Hindus continuing till date. Upanishads, 800 BC onwards, about 200 in numbers. These are about salvation through knowledge rather than by faith, and are about philosophical issues as implied by their title, which literally means down near me, means that pupil sitting down near the teacher. These scriptures have been written by Aryan scholars whose identity is against not known, except in cases where some of these are named after the names of specific scholars. These scriptures up free thinking in Hinduism, such as challenging the multiplicity of gods, relevance of Vedic rituals of sacrifice, etc. Upanishads are regarded as the consummation of Vedic philosophy. Epics or Puranas. 400 BC onwards, Purana sacred laws are a collection of legends with religious instructions, morals, and are 18 in numbers. These are two great epics, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata, Gita included. While Ramayana demonstrates righteous, teaches about the importance of duty, means karam, through its hero Krishna. Buddhism, a religion very popular in the Asia Pacific region. It is much about achieving perfect happiness through analysis of human sufferings and adopting a certain path of righteousness to remove those sufferings. Definition and origin. Buddhism is a religion founded by Buddha in 563 BC to 483 BC and originally practiced chiefly in India, where it declined after a few centuries but was diffused over several countries, particularly in the Asia Pacific region. This region is about achieving perfect happiness through analysis of human sufferings and adopting a certain path of righteousness to remove those sufferings and ultimately achieving nirvana, which is extinction of individual existence and achieving a state of supreme blessedness. Buddha, who founded the religion, belonged to a ruling family of the Shakya tribe in Nepal. He abandoned his royal life, renounced the world, and practiced meditation before he got supreme enlightenment, followed by preaching the masses. Founder, born in 563 BC as Siddhartha Gautam, to King Shuddhodana, who resigned over Kapilvastu on the present day Indo-Nepal frontier. He was declared by royal astrologers as a would-be Chakravarti, a universal monarch, either as a ruler of great kingdom or as a great ruler of the of people. As a young prince, when he saw certain significant signs of human suffering, namely old age, sickness, and death, he became extremely uncomfortable and concerned about how to avoid these sufferings. He also saw an ascetic observing penance and yet looking happy and contented with a blissful unconcern for whatever sufferings existing around. Influenced by these observations, Siddhartha Gautam renounced the world at the age of 29 and took to an ascetic's life, went southwards, meditating over the root cause of human suffering and a way to obliterate the same. Extreme austerity observed as an ascetic left his body so weak that it could not support his mind, which was aiming at meditation over the issues of suffering and the way to get rid of the same. He realized that the extremes of adversity. He realized that the extremes of austerity on one hand and of pleasures on the other were both wrong, and that a balance between these extremes was a major sensible approach. He carried on with meditation for 6 long years before he got divine enlightenment on the subject of his search, and because known as Buddha, the enlightened one, he took to extensive traveling, preaching the masses and founding both Dharam, a code of righteous conduct, which later became popularly known as Buddhism. He also formed an order of his followers, monks and the nuns, having uniform code of conduct, discipline and outwardly appearance, and named it Sangha. While on his preaching missions, he died attaining the great salvation known as Mahaparinibhan. Mahaparinibhan in 483 BC at the age of 80 years in a small town Kushinagar, north of Varanasi, the holy Indian city in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. It may be interesting to note that Buddha did not initiate any system of hierarchy for leaders to acquire the position of top guru of the followers after his death, but advised them to follow his doctrines and disciplines, which should be enough to lead them, and that each follower should really upon his own self as friend, philosopher and guide, should rely upon his own self as friend, philosopher and guide. Basic philosophy and teachings. Buddha's doctrines are basically about choosing a middle path between a pleasurable and lustful life on one hand, which is merely sensual and brings about sufferings and no real gains, and a real life of severe austerity on the other hand, which is painful and ignoble. According to Buddha, it is only a middle path which would bring about wisdom, leading to perfect happiness after crossing the river or ocean of sufferings, which he termed as nirvana. During the first sermon, first disciples of a deer park in Sarnath, suburb of Varanasi, he disclosed four noble truths about suffering. Sorrows and suffering are inseparable from existence. Desire is the root cause of all sorrows and suffering in life. Desire can be overcome through nirvana, a state of mental attainment of supreme blessedness, and this nirvana can be achieved during one's lifetime itself through suppression of desires, or better put, by freeing oneself from the shackles of desires and in turn from suffering through a disciplined life, following an eightfold path of righteousness. Eightfold path of righteousness can be treated by adopting right beliefs or opinions or views, right aspirations or resolve, right speech, right action, right means of livelihood, right efforts, right mindfulness or awareness, right meditation. According to Buddha, cessation of sufferings can happen through cessation of desire, its abandonment, surrender and release from it. To facilitate this, Buddha issued 10 commandments. Buddha issued 10 commandments which are as follows. First 5 commandments of the strict number. First 5 commandments of the strict no category. One is refrain from harming living beings, means for compassion and kindness. Next, number 2 is refrain from accepting what is not given voluntarily, means for magnanimity and renunciation. Number 3 is refrain from sensual misconduct, means for contentment and happiness in one's life. Next, number 4 is refrain from speaking lies, means for being with the truth. Next, number 5 is refrain from consuming intoxicants, means for remaining alert and sensible. Another 5 vices which Buddha advised people to refrain from were of relatively less importance from outsiders' point of view, like solid food after midday, refraining from pleasurable pursuits like music, refraining from use of perfume, jewelry, etc., refraining from sleeping on high bed, and refraining from accepting expensive gifts. Buddha believed that means deeds, which is the sum total of one's actions in life, determines one's fate in the next life. Based on this, he evolved the doctrine of causality. The doctrine of causality, which says that everything that arises has something else as its cause. Buddha's teachings are primarily based on this and are thus about righteousness in one's life, which alone can ensure cessation of sufferings leading to nirvana. Concept of God. Buddha never spoke of God or of a supreme being as creator of the universe. He did not believe in the existence of the Hindu trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiv gods. However, and interestingly, Buddha was himself later considered as a Hindu god, as an incarnation of Vishnu, the supreme Hindu god, and at par with other incarnations of Vishnu, like the better known Ram of Ramayana and Krishna of Mahabharata, the two great epics of Hindu literature. This was in spite of the fact that Buddha gave no importance to the then prevailing Hindu scriptures. Buddha instructed his followers not to waste time on lasers, on issues like origin of the world, existence of God, etc., because any investigation into such issues would be purposeless and may only distract the mind from more irrelevant truths. It may be worthwhile to mention here that Buddha never thought of creating a new religion, but only about creating right convictions and about good conduct, because He strongly believed that issues such as body and soul are same or not, or God is eternal or not, should be best left only to scholars on metaphysical issues. He did not accept the Hindu phenomenon of eternal soul but believed in a flow of consciousness which gets transferred from one birth to the other next, and it is this consciousness which is the basis of one's identity. Afterlife, Buddha's belief in rebirth was akin to Hindu belief that good karam means deeds can lead to rebirth in higher echelons of living world, ultimately leading to moksha means salvation. He rejected an earlier Hindu belief about worlds where souls of the dead stay on permanent basis instead of rebirth. Buddha also disputed the Brahmanical belief about perpetuity of soul, means until it emerges with the supreme soul in the process of moksha, and propounded that humans are an amazing fusion of five impermanent constituents called skandha, aggregates. Skandha means aggregates, namely physical form, feelings, perception, mental coadjuvants or attitudes like greed and hate, and consciousness. These five constituents in unison make up a human being, and it is the flow of consciousness which gets transferred from one birth to the other next on basis of one's identity. Scriptures, Buddha's fundamental principles are contained in sermons, rules for the followers, and other philosophical discussions which were documented much after Buddha had passed away. This documentation in 3 volumes came to be known as Tipitaks, namely Vinaya Pitak, the code of discipline for order; Sut Pitak, a compilation of Buddha's sermons; and Adidham and Abhidham Pitak, dealing with philosophical issues. While the above mentioned texts were the first texts adopted by the monastic order called Hinayan, a later Buddhist movement called Mahayana evolved its own text, namely Vaipulya Sutra, expanded from Buddha's sermons. Lalit Vistar, an ornate description of Buddha's life. Sadam Pundratika Sutra, Sadhar Mapundratika Sutra, containing dialogues. Vajrach Hedika, discussing metaphysical issues. Sukhvasti view, describing Buddha's heaven. Karanda view, adorning Buddha in the manifestation of Avalokiteswar, and Astasasarika Prajna Parimita, describing mystical perfection of Buddha. It may be worth adding here that The language used in all the Buddhist texts was Pali, the then prevailing language of the region of Buddha's initial activities, and not in Sanskrit language, which had become exclusive for use by Brahmins. Worship. Buddha was against worship, although his images form an essential part of every Buddhist monastery or temple today, a practice which started only about 7 centuries after Buddha had passed away. Initially, the cult of sacred sports, groves of trees, or stupas had been the basis of ritual as against the then prevailing rituals of sacrifice in Brahmanism. Growth and sects. After Buddha's Mahaparinirvan, 500 of his staunch followers met with an idea to compile the teachings of their master. Since no texts were ever written during Buddha's lifetime, differing versions of his teachings were put forward, which showed differences among the followers, a reason for subsequent formation of several sects. Buddha's fundamental principles contained in sermons, rules of the order, and philosophical discussions were documented in 3 volumes, which later came to known as Tipitaka, described in some details in the passage on scriptures. Thank you, listeners and learners. It is the basic knowledge and fundamentals that is greatly required to know for our scholars and learners of the universities and for the common citizen of our nation. These fundamentals provide us the unique, unparalleled and incomparable knowledge, information, instruction, direction, and how to live happier life. Manners, style, standard, everything whatsoever we expect in this modern time from the Western culture. This Western culture, world culture, has created from the Indian culture. That's why we are known as the founders, beginner, initiator, creator, and operator of the newnesses in the world. Our present Prime Minister, Dr. Narendra Modi ji, who started and addressed the unique message of our culture, unity in diversity, whose role model, Swami Vivekananda, who addressed in the USA in 1893 by addressing the people, my brothers and sisters of the America. These were not the common words. These words were the symbol and glimpse of our culture, which showed that our culture is truly remarkable, uncomparable and incomparable. These words show the purity, chastity, sanctity of our culture. These words are not only in words. These words shows the energy of our culture. So everyone who is studying in competition, a person who is preparing for any kind of administrative services in competition, he is going to appear IAS competition, IPS competition, any kind of social services he is preparing, he must know the fundamentals of our culture strongly, because we are the ardent and strong believer of our culture. Our nation is known as one of the greatest nation of the cultures. We are the beginner, starter, and the fields of education, health, service sector, communication, transportation, in all the sectors of our economy. society, politics, we have one of the greatest, highest scale. So it's our prime duty to be careful for our nation, for the regeneration and reoperation of our society. It must be adopted. We are the strong believer of the unread, unspoken, unwritten and unheard philosophy of our scriptures, of our culture. And one day we will definitely bring a revolutionary and visionary change by the blessings and grace of our forefathers, foretellers, forecasters, free thinkers, messengers, those who came first in the form of great light source by being the sun. They were alone, only one, but they started creating awakening in the mind and heart of the people. So we are to take the lesson and example from the natural celestial body in the form of the sun in daytime and in the form of the moon at night time. These are the sum of the celestial bodies that make us able to feel the presence of Lord everywhere. Lord, who He was, who He is, and who He was in past, present, and future. Everywhere He is always with us. And Swami Vivekananda proved it, appealed and advocated, addressed to the all worldly people that we feel in the existence of Lord even where there is no air, fire, soil, and sky, water. We feel the presence of Lord even where there is no light and sound. So this will the great message of Swami Vivekananda. Return to the Vedas, return to the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. These are the basic scriptures of our Hinduism and Hindu land. And this must be turned towards the nature. And this was the great association which was provided by William Wordsworth by saying that return to the nature. And if you want to have the real pleasure and happinesses in your life, then you must turn towards your childhood, because of the past history that is really recordable, that provide us the path of truthness, sincerity, goodnesses. This is the great wonderful land where we reside, and our present Prime Minister addressed strongly to the worldly people. They are to do yoga, pranayama, meditation, because meditation is the supreme medication of our body, and we are to recreate our Ayurveda by adopting the path of oneness, equality in our body and mind. In our body we have the great source of knowledge, mind and heart. If both these internal organs are compromised for getting success in all the fields, then we can become the true successful people of our society and nation. For the betterment and upliftment of our society, we must take the lesson from our foretellers, forecasters, free thinkers, freedom fighters. Our daily routine must we spend as per the law of nature. So thanks all brothers and sisters, those who are listening and learning. Really, all of you are the judges, observers and examiners, evaluators of the speakers. A person who speaks is silver but silent. It is rightly said that silence is gold, speak is silver. So, thanks for listeners and readers, speakers, writers, learners. Thanks for knowing the basic fundamentals and foundation courses of our religious starters, beginners and initiators. Thanks, nice to meet all of you, nice to see all of you, nice thinking about all of you. May God bless you.